Who is this that cometh from Edom, with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Yahushua is coming back soon. He's going to take his rightful place on the earth as a king, because he is a King of kings and Lord of lords. Finally, righteousness will rule once again, once the Son of the Most High, Yahweh, comes back to the earth to take his rightful place. This is what we've been waiting for, and this is what's coming very, very soon. He's sitting at the right hand of the Most High, waiting until his enemies be made his footstool. This is going to be a very glorious day when Yahushua comes back and cracks them clouds in the chariots that the world knows as so-called UFOs. This so-called spaceship, which is a chariot, is going to be a very large chariot, a very large so-called UFO that he's going to come back with to save and deliver his elect and to destroy the other nations. He's going to take Esau out first, because Esau is the rulers of this present day planet today, and they're about to go down in a hard way. They've prepared all types of traps. They have all types of weapons to fight against the Lord and against his anointed, but they're going to lose miserably, because the battle was already won for Yahushua, because the Most High gave him that authority. This is why he is known as the King of kings and Lord of lords. Revelation 19:16, and he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of kings and Lord of lords. And this is Yahushua when he comes back traveling in the greatness of his strength. This is what the world does not want to happen. The world is not waiting for this, but the ones that are waiting for this are the elect. And when he comes back, he's coming to take Esau off his throne and set himself back up in righteousness on his throne. Isaiah 66:15, for behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by a sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. There will be a lot of death in this upcoming war. You're gonna have World War III going on, with the different nations fighting in their jets and whatever other vehicles they have. And then Yahushua and the angels are gonna come through the clouds with the chariots, and they're gonna eviscerate anything that's in their way. And Esau is gonna be that smoke, that fuel that's gonna fuel the fire that's coming. 2 Ezra 13:3, and I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it feeleth the fire. Because he's coming back to bring fire with the chariots, but also the thermonuclear missiles will be shot. And that is the judgment, that lake of fire, which is the second death that the Lord promised that will come to this place. It's prophesied, and it will happen. So before Yahushua can sit on his throne, he has to take out the enemy that's sitting on the throne right now. And that enemy is dealing with Esau, the Edomites, and the other nations. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it feeleth the fire. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of heaven, to subdue the man that came out of the sea. So these are all the different nations. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it. And that is the chariot that he's coming in. It's going to be so huge that Ezra mistook it for a mountain, and he looked all throughout to see where this mountain was taken out of. But I would have seen the region or place where the hill was graven, and I could not, because it wasn't an actual mountain. It was an actual chariot that was so big that the only thing that he could use to compare was a mountain. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they that were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid, and yet durst fight. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lift up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid.
Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. And all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so. Amen. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty.
Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.